Hello and welcome to tonight's Get in Tune. I got a really fun guest. This guy has been in the comic industry for a long time. His strip is almost as old as I am. It came out when I was 11 years old in 1987. It is called Slylock Fox, and he's done some other stuff which we'll talk about, but Slylock is what he's known for. And let me bring on Bob Weber Jr. Hello, Bob.
Hey, Michael. Hello.
Hi, thanks for tuning in. And before we get started,
Thanks for having me.
Oh, anytime. I want to just put your website, SlylockFox.com, which you guys can go to after the show or in another window while this is still going on. Please don't leave. And we will, and you can check out his stuff, check out his books, check out everything there. For those watching, if at any point you have questions, just add them into the comments. I'll be happy to ask them. And Bob, if you see me looking down at any point, I have just some web pages opened up on my Cintiq, so that's where I'm looking down.
Okay.
Mike Wilkie, I don't know if you know Mike, but he's a cartoonist as well. Hey, Mike, thanks for coming on. He does some really fun stuff.
Hey,
strips Watermelon Bones. What I like to do before we really get into talking about your work is talk about how you got into comics. Now, we know you grew up around comics, so can you tell us a little bit about that, how that kind of inspired you? And not just how you grew up, but what artists actually inspired you? Who were you looking at that really stood out for you?
Well, obviously, I was looking over my father's shoulder, or at that time I was probably small. But my dad was a cartoonist. He passed away last year.
Sorry to
hear. But he was a cartoonist. He started his career as a magazine cartoonist in the I would say mid to late 50s. And so he was selling a lot of the major magazines at that time, the Saturday Evening Post and Collier's, and just most of the magazines that ran gag cartoons in those days. And when he first started, he was living in Maryland, where he grew up. He was born in Baltimore. And so I would say, I think around 1960 or so, he went up to New York and he was visiting with other cartoonists, one of the cartoonists named Orlando Buccino in particular. And Orlando was a very successful magazine cartoonist and one of the best. I mean, he's a terrific cartoonist. And he's still around. He's like in his 90s. Nice guy and just super talented. But my dad went up and they became friends just on his visits up there. And Orlando talked my dad into moving up to New York. He lived in Queens for a while. And so he would go into New York on look days, on Wednesdays, make the rounds with the other gag cartoonists. And then eventually he moved to Connecticut, I guess a couple of years after that, because Connecticut at that time was a real, I guess you could say like a mecca of cartoonists. So it just there were so many artists and cartoonists that were living in Connecticut, and he wanted to be around them and learn from them and just be a part of the group. And so he moved to Connecticut. And growing up, I got to meet some of the guys and women and that were cartoonists, and but when I got to be close to my teens and in my teens, sometimes people would say, "Oh, do you want to be a cartoonist just like your dad?" And even though I like to draw and I like to write, I always just felt like, no, I want to do my own thing. So I'd say, no, I don't want to be a cartoonist. And so throughout school, and when I got to high school and just before college, I thought I wanted to be a high school science teacher. And so that was kind of the plan. But then I guess what started to change my mind is in 1975, I believe, I went to San Diego with my father. We went to the San Diego Comic-Con. And at that time, I think it was at the El Cortez Hotel in San Diego. I actually went to the second Comic-Con ever in 1971, but I was just 13 years old at that point. So in 75, I went out to California. We flew out there, and we stayed with a friend of his, a really good cartoonist named Marty Murphy.
Okay.
And Marty did a lot of work for animation, and he also was a regular cartoonist in Playboy magazine at that time. But primarily, he worked in animation, and he even taught at Hanna-Barbera at night. He would be teaching young animators. So when I went to that convention, it really kind of, I don't know, I came back with a different attitude. I met a lot of artists. I just felt like, you know, I really would like to be a part of this. I really feel like this is something I want to do as a career. It just charged me up. So when I got back, and that fall, I started college, and I went into the student newspaper office, and I said I'd like to do cartoons for the thing. And they were, you know, I said, oh, they needed to fill space, so they let me do cartoons, and that that really helped give me a little bit of confidence too, because I would get feedback and some nice feedback from students and readers, and so so between going to San Diego and working on the paper that year, and then going into the next year, I thought, boy, I really want to try this.
Yeah.
And at that time, I started working with my dad. I was writing gags for him, and I was doing some inking on this. He did a comic strip called Moose and Molly.
Yes.
At that time, it was called Moose Miller, but then later he changed the title to Moose and Molly.
Yeah.
Actually, when it debuted in 1965, it was called just called Moose, and then it was Moose and Molly, and that's I guess Moose Miller maybe for a while, and then Moose and Molly. But anyway, I started writing and inking for that. But I started submitting gag cartoons to small magazines. They call them trade journals.
Yeah.
Because they were a little easier to break into. So I started doing that. I sold a few of those. But I knew that if I really wanted to do what I wanted to do in cartooning, and my goal was to, at that time, do magazine stuff, but in the back of my mind, I'm thinking one day I'd like to do a syndicated feature.
Yeah.
That I wouldn't be able to stay where I was. And at that time, I was living in Maryland. And so I thought, I'm going to have to get close to New York.
Yeah.
So in 1980, I moved to Connecticut. I knew some people there already. So I moved to Connecticut, and I started meeting with a lot of the cartoonists up there at lunches. You know, they'd love to sit for hours and hours and just talk, cartooning mostly at lunches. And so I really enjoyed that. I mean, and there was a lot of terrific cartoonists that I got a chance to meet. I really feel fortunate at that time. That I just to name a few, I guess, would be Stan Drake, who was a funny guy, and a great artist. He did The Heart of Juliet Jones. John Prentice, another terrific cartoonist, and then Orlando Bucino, I mentioned. He was living in Ridgefield, Connecticut, still is.
Okay.
And then Jerry Marcus, another cartoonist. He did a strip called Trudy for King Features, and he was a magazine cartoonist as well. And Gil Fox, who went way back. Gil, he actually worked for Fleischer at one time.
Wow.
But he and worked on Betty Boop cartoons. But he also did a lot of other syndicated things. He ghosted a lot of strips, and he did a strip called Side Glances, a panel called Side Glances later on. Yeah. So and Mort Walker lived there. I got to meet Mort and just so many. Guy Gilchrist, another friend of mine, Mark Brewer, who's a terrific illustrator. I don't know, Bill Sienkiewicz lived in my town. I used to hang out with Bill. and we even tried a feature together.
Really?
Yeah, it was called Sports Spotlight, and he drew it because he's the man.
Yeah.
And then I wrote it, and we had some interest from Syndicate, but it wasn't really the right thing. So, but he did a terrific job with the samples, beautiful. There was so many more I can't think of right now, but that really charged me up. That really got me excited to be around these pros.
Yeah.
And I just, it was fun. And as far as work goes, I was waiting tables in Westport, Connecticut, at an Italian restaurant, waiting tables, and then I would work on my cartoons when I wasn't there, and then go into New York with other cartoonists to magazines.
Yeah.
And I went, like I said, I went up to New York, Connecticut in 1980, and actually a friend of mine went with me. He was a student, college student. He went to the Catholic University in Washington.
Yeah.
And so we were good friends. He was actually an editor at the newspaper that I worked on, and so we got to be friends. And so I said, Ted, I'm gonna try this, and I'm gonna go up to Connecticut and see what happens. I'm gonna give it a summer. If it doesn't work, I'm coming back. And he said, well, yeah. He says, maybe I'll go too. I don't have anything planned for the summer. So he went and drove with me. And so, but we didn't really make plans as far as where we were going to live, what jobs we were going to have. So, and I had very little money going up. So the first night we drove, we got to, I went to Westport because that was a town I knew, and Norwalk I knew too, but I went to Westport for some reason. Yeah. And I said, where are we going to stay tonight? We didn't have a place to stay. And so we ended up sleeping outside behind a amphitheater in Westport, Levitt Pavilion. And,
wow.
The geese woke us up at like 5 a.m. The first night. That's what we did.
Yeah.
But then after that, I talked to a couple of the cartoonists that I had made contact with, and one of them said, "Oh, I know a guy who, he said that he would take you in until you find a place." So we stayed at a friend's house for a couple of nights, and then we were able to find rooms for rent. He found a place. I found a place. And like I said, I was going to give it a summer. And I was going into New York, showing my work. And I was just lucky enough, I guess, to sell a cartoon to a magazine. It was Good Housekeeping.
Okay.
And, which was a fairly major market, then. Mm-hmm. There weren't a lot of big magazines at that point. Yeah. Very difficult. You couldn't really make a good living at it, unless you were selling them all. And, and I wasn't going to do that at that point. But I made a sale, and it was, my rent in the room was $50 a week.
Wow. At
that time. I lived in a room in a house with an elderly guy, a nice guy. He's very picky though. I couldn't have guests in, and he was very eccentric, but a terrific guy. And so let's see, where was I? Oh yeah. So it's like I said, I was paying like $50 a week, and I was working in a restaurant, and so I got to free meal, dinner, which was nice. And then so I sold this first cartoon, The Good Housekeeping, and they paid $400.
Wow.
And I thought, oh, well, that's more than a couple months rent. It's like 2 months rent right there. That's my summer. And I thought, I think I'll stay. So after that, I didn't sell another cartoon for like a couple of months, and I was like, oh no, what did I, and I didn't register to go back to school. So but then fortunately I sold another cartoon at the end of the summer at a magazine called Ladies Home Journal.
Mm-hmm.
And they paid about the same, maybe a little more, maybe $4.50, something like that. So that kind of gave me the confidence to keep pushing.
Yeah.
Then, geez, it sounds like a long story, but
it's okay. It's a great story.
So, but then, you know, well, I'm going to go back a little bit and tell you something funny.
Okay, go for it.
Well, it was funny to me, but when my friend Ted and I were there, I mean, I would see him, but I didn't see him all the time. But we would get together, you know, after his work or my work, we'd get together and hang out and, you know, go around town. It's a nice town. And they would have concerts outside. So sometimes I'd say, hey, meet me there. They're going to have some music there tonight. And we would go. But the funny thing is, he worked in a restaurant, but he worked in the kitchen. Okay. And I worked in a restaurant, and I worked in the as a waiter. But the funny thing is that both of us, he would bring like a potato home from work, and I would do similar things, and that was how you know. And I look back on those times, you know, like having a potato and a Cornish hen or whatever, which you could get at that time for like $1, you know, $1.25 the most. And but now I look back on those days, and it was just so much fun. It was just exciting. It was an exciting time.
It's always exciting when you're like, I don't want to use the word struggling, but when you're trying, you know, to break in. They always say, you know, the journey is the fun part.
Yeah, so. Yeah. But like I said, I met a lot of terrific cartoonists who were very supportive, and they. That's one thing I learned about most cartoonists, especially successful cartoonists, who were, you know, who who's made a living at it. They were always very generous with advice and very generous with sharing information. Mm-hmm. And I really appreciated that. It was great. It was really nice. But what the next step, I was working one night at the restaurant, and a guy came in, and I could, you know, he was at one of my tables, and I when I would go over, I would hear him talking about cartoons, and he looked kind of familiar, but I never met the guy before. I didn't know, I hadn't met him, but but anyway, so I got up to enough nerve to just say, you know, I heard you talking about cartoons. I thought I want to be a cartoonist, and I said, my dad's a cartoonist. Maybe you know him. And it turns out it was someone my dad knew very well from years ago, and he knew my dad really well. He even bought cartoons from him. His name was Bill Yates. And Bill Yates was the comics editor at King Features Syndicate at the time. And but he was also a magazine cartoonist in his early years, and he edited a magazine called Thousand Jokes, which was a magazine that bought a lot of gag cartoons. Okay. It was all cartoons and then some like short humor essays. Yeah. And as a matter of fact, one of the guys that used to write short humor essays then went on to Hollywood and ended up writing a lot of TV scripts. He wrote that Chuckles the Clown episode from Mary Tyler Moore. Okay. He started out working in Thousand Jokes magazine. Okay. So I was like, this is the comics editor at King Features Syndicate. I was like, I can't believe it. So I told him, so I talked to him about, what I wanted to do and everything. And he said, so one of the guys in the bullpen at King Features, that was the art department at King Features. Yeah. And they called it the bullpen, going way back, like 75 years before or whatever. So he says, one of the guys in the bullpen is leaving, and we're going to be looking for a replacement. He said, would you be interested in applying for that position? And, all I had to do was look around the restaurant and say, yeah, I'll be there tomorrow. But the thing is, he said, most of your job would be doing corrections on comic strips. So the comic strips come in from all over the country. They're mailed in, and at that time, most cartoonists were sending in original art. Yeah. And then King Features had a library where they stored it, and then they would ship it back to the artists. So he said, we need somebody that can do corrections. That means you have to be able to letter, and you have to be able to mimic lettering styles of different artists. And then one of the other jobs would be to do what they called rescales, and that's what they used to do. They don't do that anymore by hand, but a lot of cartoonists would do their strip in a particular format, but the Syndicate sold the strips in different formats, in different sizes, formats. Like Prince Valiant, they would sell in different formats besides the full page that at that time John Cullen Murphy was drawing it.
Yeah.
And so he would send it in, and they would take a photostat of it. We had a big photostat machine, and then there's a few artists there that would cut the panels, and then rubber cement them into a template that would be a different format. Yeah. And then you would have to, with pen and ink, you'd have to fill in, because we were in some cases stretching the art.
Yeah.
So you'd have to fill in to the borders, and you'd have to kind of copy the pen line and this. So those were my tasks. I wasn't really, I could letter some, but I wasn't a great letterer. So I called Gil Fox, and Gil Fox was a very good letterer. He actually at that time was lettering for John Cullen Murphy. He was lettering Prince Valiant.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so I called Gil and I said, I just got this, offer to come in and apply for this job, but they want me to letter. I said, can you give me some lessons really quick, And so he said, sure. So I spent like a week or so, maybe even a little less, over at his house, and just lettering, doing, he lent me pens.
Wow.
He was such a sweet guy. And so then I went into King Features and I showed him some samples. And then I also showed them artwork, and they said, okay, thank you. And I guess a day or two later, I got a call, and they said, if you still want the position, you can come in and we could start. So that was huge. That was huge, and I was really happy. And so that I became a commuter. I took the train in every day from the Westport train station into Manhattan. Okay. And because King Features at that time was at 235 East 45th Street, so it was a pretty short walk from Grand Central to King Features. Yeah. So I did that. I worked there, and that's kind of how things got started for me. I almost immediately started working on comic strip ideas, because I thought, gee, I'm here. I could just. Walk into Bill Yates' office. And so I did a couple of things, and I showed it to him. And I think the first thing I showed him, he said, yeah, well, it's okay. It's pretty good, but I don't think we're going to syndicate it. One came close, actually.
Really?
But then it didn't, they didn't sign off on it in the end. Bill Yates supported it, but there were other people that didn't. And so, then what happened is King Features at that time was distributing Disney strips. They distributed, Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck, Winnie the Pooh, and then they had like a Christmas story they would do every year. But Disney, a couple things happened. Well, Disney artists went on strike. That's one thing that happened, and at that time, and they needed people to work on the strips. So I wrote. I think it was Winnie. I wrote Winnie the Pooh for a couple of months. So that kind of, and I really enjoyed it, even though it wasn't a strip that I read, but I enjoyed working on it. So then what happened was Disney called Bill Yates, somebody at Disney, and they said that they wanted to try to do a full page activity feature syndicated activity feature for kids using their properties. You know, Mickey Mouse would be in it, Donald Duck would be in it, but it would be like interactive, like puzzles and interactive things. And so Bill Yates came out to the bullpen and he said, "This is, you know, we had a meeting," and he says, "You know, this is what Disney wants." And he called me, another guy, Angelo de Cesare, who was a cartoonist there, who was very good. He even did the Cats and Jabber Kids for a while.
Okay.
While he was there in the bullpen. And so Bill Yates called 3 of us, I think, in the bullpen and said, "I want you guys to do samples of a Disney activity feature because they you know, we want to show Disney what it can look like and what we can do." And they just wanted concepts at that time. So I said, "Sure, you know, I'd love to do it." So I came up with a page or a few pages, I guess, showed it to him. And then some time went by, didn't hear anything. And then Bill Yates came out and told us that, well, Disney decided that, you know, they didn't want to do it after all. You know, it was an idea, but, you know, they're not going to do it.
Yeah.
So, but it didn't matter to me. I mean, I was doing it on staff. So, but I thought, you know, when they pulled the plug on it, I thought, gee, I put this time into this and I kind of laid it out. So maybe I could plug my own characters, my own things into it. And, you know, this might be fun to do. I could have a humor cartoon in it. I could have little puzzles and just do whatever I wanted to do with that page.
Yeah.
And so, so I worked up a few and I showed it to one of the executives at King at that time, he ran the international sales department. Okay. His name was Hal Schneider. Really sweet guy, nice guy, very enthusiastic about everything, you know. And so I showed it to him, and he said, "Oh yeah," he says, "I like this, you know." I don't know if he was just being nice or what, but he says, "Do you mind if I send samples to my international reps? Some of my, you know, like in Bulls in Europe was a big company that King had a contract with to distribute in Europe. And then he had other salespeople in Asia, in South America, and Malaysia." So I said, "Sure, yeah, great," you know. And so he mailed it out, and then some time went by, and they called me and said into his office, and he said, "You know, Bob," he says, "we got some nice response." He says, "Some of these guys, they want to sell it." But it was only international. It wasn't domestic. It was just like for international. So he said what they would like to do is sell your comic in lots. So not you know, syndication, but they want you to do like 13 weeks. We'll start with 13. Do 13 of these pages, and we'll see how it goes. So I did those 13, and at the end of that time, he says, "Well, you know, it's doing fairly well. You know, if you want to do another 13, you know, we could try to build from there." Yeah. So I did another 13. I think I may have done 2 or 3 lots of 13.
Okay.
And then I thought, well, gee, I'm doing this, and it's doing pretty well. You know, I had a pretty decent list for just international. So I took it. I decided that I would try to go back to, you know, the sales manager at King Features, and see if I could get them to pick it up as a syndicated feature.
Okay.
And that's what. And it took a little time, and you know, it didn't happen right away. But then eventually they said, "Yeah, I think we're going to do it. We're going to release it." Wow. And so, like I said, it started international in 1986. Okay. And then it debuted domestically as a syndicated feature in 1987. And I should say that in that time that I was working on it, I brought my dad in. Okay. And as he was, you know, still doing his strip, but I said, "Do you want to work on this with me?" And he said, "Yeah, sure, yeah. What, you know, whatever you know, if we could work together, that'd be great." So so I brought him in on it, and we started, like I said, in 1987. And you know, it started out doing fairly well in syndication, and then it started to build. And after a couple of years, a few years, it really started to roll. I think by 2000, early 2000s, it was up over 400 clients altogether.
Wow.
Of course, then we had 2007 and 8 and 9. Well, actually 7, 8, and 9, when the economy kind of nosedived, and a lot of papers were really suffering along with a lot of other people. So some of those clients, some of those papers, they cut their comic sections. So I lost a few clients in that. But I had a strip that at that time took the hits pretty well, as far as pruning from editors, because it was a strip that was directed at young readers, and at that point, papers were still interested in bringing in young readers that would stick with the paper. Not so much anymore, but at that time, having a strip that was targeted at kids was a good thing. And that's why we titled the strip Comics for Kids when it was released. Slylock Fox was a character in the strip, and a central character, but not in the title.
Okay.
So it was just called Comics for Kids. And then as Slylock Fox seemed to get more and more attention, and most of the mail focused on that part of it, I asked the editor that after Bill Yates, I had asked if we could change the title to Slylock Fox and Comics for Kids.
Mm-hmm.
And so we did that, and it's been that title ever since.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you about a certain type of the Slylocks you do. When you do your 2 photos and there's things slightly off.
The 6 differences.
The 6 different things. Do you know how nuts that drives me when I see it posted? I always find everything but one. And I don't know if I'm colorblind, so I never know if it's a color thing or what.
Yeah, I know.
So
I know.
It drives me. I love it though.
I'll get back to 1 second. I just want to. I mentioned the new editor, but I just want to mention his name. His name was Jay Kennedy, and he was a tremendous editor, great editor, and a good guy. And he unfortunately lost his life on vacation. He actually drowned.
Sorry to hear.
But he was a terrific human being, and just a really insightful editor. He knew his stuff. Smart guy, and he was really missed. But anyway, back to the 6 differences.
Yeah.
So that's really a big part of the strip for a lot of readers. I would say, especially for adult readers. One time, back around 2000, probably like around 2005 or so, the paper, the Jacksonville paper in Florida, dropped the strip. And like a couple of weeks later, I got a call from one of the salesmen who covered that territory. And he says, "You're going back into Jacksonville." And I said, "Really? Oh, that's great." I said, "How did that happen?" And he said, "Well, you're not going to believe this, but they got tons of letters from angry readers." And I said, "Really?" I'm surprised. I thought, kids don't usually write letters. He says, they were senior citizens. He says they love it. And so I said, "Wow, that's fantastic." So that really. I thought, well, I'm not going to leave that out. That's going to stay in the script. Because the 6 differences was not part of the original strip. I added it, later on, and just to try it out, sort of, And then I found out how popular it was, and now, it's in there every week.
Yeah, no, it's a fantastic part. And like I said, I follow you on social media. Every time you post it, I'm like trying to zoom in and where am I missing? There's that one I could never find. I'll show it to my wife. She's like, I found it. And
well, sometimes, and I hate to admit this, right now, but sometimes through the process of getting it done and, late hours with deadline and whatever, sometimes there'll be 7. I don't know if you ever noticed, but occasionally there'll be 7 differences. Because I'll just like do one and I forgot I did, and so it'll go through. I try not to do that. Let it go through. I'm more careful about that now. But so I would hear from people saying, "I found 2. I found 7 differences. What's my reward? What do I get?"
That's funny. Do they? I'm sorry. Actually, I'll get back to it because my mind kind of went in a different direction. I'm sorry with questions. I'm looking down here and I'm on a page. I can't even pronounce the website right now, but it has a little bio on you and about the work you've done. And I've seen this before, but I never really followed it. Can you talk about Bonnie and Booboo?
Oh, well, that was part of the strip. That was.
Oh, was it?
It started out as like a little panel. In that initial package that I did for international clients. Okay. And it was just a brother and sister. Yeah. And this is going to segue into something else, as you might guess. But so it was a brother and sister panel that was in this package page, and so. When my strip started, it was only a Sunday. So I had, but then later in 1992, it was doing well. So they decided at King Features that we should try to do this as a daily strip as well. So we started doing the daily, and I would have like a rotation in the dailies. Monday would be a Slylock Fox mystery puzzle. Tuesday would be a 6 differences. Wednesday would be like a nature true false thing. Thursday would be another 6 differences, and then Friday would be a little how to draw, and then Saturday would be mixed bag, like different things. But I started putting Bonnie and Booboo in the daily occasionally.
Okay.
And then after I did that for a while, I really liked writing that strip. It was fun to write. And so I went back to the editor at King Features, the sales manager. First the editor, then the sales manager.
Okay. And
I said, I'd like to try this as its own strip, like a spin-off. And they said, well, I don't know, So then we go back to Hal Schneider at International. I was like, it worked before, I'll go back to Hal. And I showed it to him. And he goes, oh, I like this. I like it again, I like this. And so he showed it to some of his international people, and he got good response. So they decided that they would syndicate it. It wouldn't be done in like piecemeal or anything. It would be syndicated, but only internationally. Okay. So Bonnie and Booboo went into international syndication. I guess I don't know if I can't think of the year right now. I should have made more notes, but it was it was like the mid. Like around 94, 5, maybe in that range, maybe 92, maybe it could have been 92. But anyway, I still have brochures in a box in my garage somewhere. I could go, but so it did, and it did pretty well. It did okay. I did it for a while, but it just was a lot to do, and so I eventually just said I got the daily now. Let's just do that. Let's just do the daily and the Sunday and not that. So jump. I'll just take this and jump way forward, and then we can go back again. But
okay.
I always liked Bonnie and Booboo, and I like the dynamic between the brother and sister and leaving out the parents and just have it their world. And the sister was kind of a surrogate mom to her younger brother. Yeah. So jumping forward to 2005, I went to the NCS Rubin weekend in Scottsdale, Arizona, in 2005, and that's where I met Jay Stevens.
Yes.
He actually did a panel presentation that I made sure that I saw. So then after that, I went up to him and I told him how much I liked his work, and you know, and I truly loved it. You know, a week or so after that, a week or so went by, and I thought, you know, his work, his style, even though he had a different, you know, style of writing, wasn't what I was doing, but I loved his work so much that I thought, let me ask him if he'd be interested in collaborating. And I thought I could take this brother and sister idea, Bonnie and Booboo, and just see what he does with it. So that's what I did. I contacted him and I said, do you want to work on this? And I sent them some samples, and he said, yeah, I'd like to try that. And he says, this would be something different for me. So we started working up samples, and eventually King Features Syndicate, Brendan Burford was the comics editor at that time. He liked Jay's work, and he liked what we were doing, and they decided that they would syndicate it. But by that time, 2010, 2011, you know, papers weren't so much interested in features for kids. Because I don't know, I don't want to say they gave up on young readers, but it wasn't, you know, it just didn't fly as well at that time. And so, but the papers that, I mean, we had an okay list, but not enough for two people to do. So we just decided, no, we got out of that. And but after we got out of that, oh gosh, I'm going all over the place with this.
It's okay.
But this is like stream of consciousness here. I need a drink of water, but anyway.
If you have it, or need to take a moment, go.
No, that's okay. I'm all right.
Okay.
So what was I going to say that? Oh yeah. So one day I'm sitting in my studio, and I'm at my computer, and an email comes in, because I used to put my email in the strip. Now I don't. I just put my web address in the strip. I used to put my email in the strip, and so I get an email, and it was from a guy who had a new company at that time. It was just starting, called MobyMax, and it was an online company that provides like lesson plans and lessons for teachers in the classroom. So they log in and they'd get all these lessons, and he was a very successful entrepreneur. This guy had done other things where he did extremely well in other areas, and so his company was growing really fast. And he wrote to me and he said, "I'm a huge fan of your comics." He saw it in the Washington Post. He lived in the suburbs of DC. And he said, "I think I'd like to have to use your cartoons as kind of you know, before they start their work or after they start their work. It's kind of a relief, you know, comic relief." And so so I sent him that, but at that time I had some old brother stuff that I had worked on with Jay. So I said both, and he got back to me and he said, "We'd like to use old brother." And right, you know, to start. And so I said, great. So they bought 300 cartoons right away and put it on their platform. And to this day, it still is running on their platform. And it gets a lot of good response. And I think it really helps to sell this old brother book, which it came out in 2015 with Universal Press. Andrews McNeil released the book, and it came out in 2015, and it's still doing really well, especially on Kindle.
Well, I got to say, I haven't read them all, but I've read whatever I've seen posted online, whether it's off your page or Jay's page or whatever. I think it's fantastic. I think it's humorous. The drawings are fantastic. It's just an all around
Jay's great.
Yeah, I like I told you before he came out, I've been a big fan of Jay's work for a while.
Yeah.
I want to go to some comments in the in here just in case you missed a few that I put up. Okay. So Steve Barr.
Oh, says, Steve. Hello, Steve.
And by the way, Steve, if you're still watching, you're someone I want to bring on the show too. I love looking at your work.
He does a lot of great things.
Yeah. It says many fond memories of hanging out in Westport with Bob Jr. and his dad in my younger days. The first time I ever drew in public was when they did an appearance at the Philadelphia Zoo and invited me to come see them.
Oh yeah.
Then as soon as I got there, they handed me a pen and a stack of paper and said, "Start drawing."
Yeah. Steve's a great guy. Yeah. Great guy. He's been a friend for many years. Many years. I remember one time where I think we had just come back from a lunch and we're walking down the sidewalk. You know, we'd have lunch, but then we didn't want to break up. We just wanted to all just keep on talking because they would kick us out of the restaurant. Yeah. And because sometimes we'd sit there for 3 or 4 hours and the manager would come over and say, "Oh, you can't sit here any longer. You got to get out of here. You got to give up this table." So we'd go outside and say, "Well, what do you want to do?" I don't know. What do you want to do? I said, we just start walking and talking. And so one time we're walking down the street and Steve probably remembers this. And we're walking and I'm looking down and I see a $20 bill on the ground and he sees $20 and he is quicker than me and he gets that $20 bill, you know. So I thought that was pretty funny. Anyway, but Steve's a good guy.
Yeah. Now, I don't know if these guys, and I apologize if you guys came in late, they're asking some questions that you kind of touched upon already, but Chucky Chicken Cartoons is our good friend Michael Cook. He's a fan of the show. He's a buddy of mine. He says, "Hi, Mike and Bob. Great to be tuning in. Question, if you have the time, what's it like working with King Features Syndicate? How'd that come about?" Now, you touched upon how you got in. You actually worked in their bullpen. You were basically... you were basically a production artist. I did the same thing for Archie Comics for a while.
And I did some coloring there too, because at that time, a lot of the artists would send their Sunday pages in, not colored, and they had 2 full-time color artists on staff. Okay. But sometimes one of them would go on vacation, so other people on staff, including myself, would fill in and color, different strips. There were a couple of artists that really wanted to do their own, like Bud Blake, who did Tiger.
I remember that one.
He always sent in his own color guide, and he was just, besides being an amazing cartoonist, his color sense was terrific. And I could understand why he wanted to do it himself. He just did a beautiful job. So where were we going with that now?
And he also asked, what's it like working with them?
It was great. I enjoyed it. I did. I worked there from 1981. I think it was October 81 until I guess just before my daughter was born. Until 1990.
Okay.
So 9 years. Just about 9 years, almost 9 years. It was a few months short of it, that I worked on staff. And, I worked full-time on staff for, I think, about 7 years, 6 or 7 years. And then when I sold the strip while I was working there. So at some point, I asked them if I could just work part-time. I still wanted to go in. But I didn't want to put in as many hours. I wanted to spend more time. Because what I would do is when I was working on staff, a lot of times after work, I wouldn't leave. I would just stay there and work at my desk on comics for kids. Yeah. And I'd be there sometimes till late at night. I'd even go in on weekends and work there sometimes because I had all the equipment and everything, Yeah. And so I enjoyed it. I did, and the people there were terrific. The art department, we shared a floor with a lot of people in the editorial department, and I made a lot of friends and socialized with people there, And so it was great. I met my wife there.
Oh, that's cool.
And so, but and a lot of people that I'm still in touch with.
Yeah. The next question is, and I think you touched upon it a little bit, but it says, "Hello, Mr. Weber." And this is from Annabelle, who's a fantastic illustrator. I just saw your father was also in the business.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, I'd love to hear how the artist mantle was passed along. So, is there anything you can?
I guess. How was it passed along? Well, I was there. I mean, I grew up with it, so it was kind of, that's the way, I was used to. And then it got to the point where when I got to, I guess when I was about 18, 19, and that 20 years old, late teens, my dad asked me if, because I did like to draw and I'd like to write. And so he asked me if I would want to help him out with the strip.
Yeah.
And or get involved. And I said, yeah, sure. So that's kind of how it happened. And I started writing gags for Moose, and like I said, started inking some strips. So that was really. And then, like I said, we went to California, and he used to take me to Comic-Con. And in '75, I went to before that, and I went after that. But in 1975 is when it really, really, struck a chord with me.
Yeah. Let me ask you just about writing for Moose. Was it, since you grew up with him basically in your house, was he easy to write for when you started, or was it something you had to get used to?
I tell you what one thing that made it easier is that because I saw it all the time, I knew the characters well, and I mean, he would always come out and he'd come out with gags, and he'd it asked me to read it, he asked my mom to read the gags. What do you think of this one? What do you think of it? He'd go through them, and so I was doing it from an early age. Not as a little tiny kid, but when I got to be a teenager, I would give him feedback, and so that familiarized me with the characters, with the strip, and his style of humor, which was very slapstick, Bigfoot style, and
which you have a bit.
Definitely. That's how it started.
Yeah, and the Bonnie and Booboo, I see it in the sample they're showing. You got a little bit like Booboo might be even like a little moose.
Possibly, yeah. And so that's how it started. And I guess I could segue and I'll talk about this a little bit, and go on. But writing for my dad, writing Moose, and then I'm writing Oh Brother, and all of these things kind of prepared me for a writing job that I have now, besides my own strip. And I'm writing Hagar the Horrible.
That's fantastic.
And I've been doing that for about 5 or 6 years, in that range. And I love doing that. And the Browns are amazing people, terrific people to work with. And so all of that prepared me to write that as well. And what I like about it, the strip is very old school, and so I feel comfortable working with it, and I can do sight gags if I want. I can do really silly stuff, but that I would have done for Moose, and I just feel very comfortable with it. I love the characters. The dynamic between Hagar and Lucky Eddie. I just love Lucky Eddie's just a terrific character, and the creator Dick Brown. Dick Brown was always one of my favorite cartoonists. He's just terrific, amazing, genius cartoonist. And so it was an honor to even get the opportunity. And I'll tell you how it happened. I got a recommendation. Just I didn't even ask for it, but Jay Kennedy. Oh no, was it Jay Kennedy? No. No, I'm sorry, it wasn't. It was after Jay. It was Brendan Burford. Brendan Burford, who was a very good, he was a cartoonist, but he was the comics editor at King Features Syndicate. And he recommended me as a writer to the Browns. And so they contacted me and asked me to send samples. And I sent some, a few samples. I don't know how many it was, but maybe a dozen or so or more, a little more.
Yeah.
And they got back to me and said, "Wow, we really love these. You really have a feel for the character. We like these a lot. Would you like to do this and start?" And I said, "Yeah." So and I've been enjoying it. I mean, it's challenging and it's nerve-wracking because you want to. I mean, I really, especially when you're doing something for someone else, you really feel responsible. Mm-hmm. I mean, I feel responsible for my own work, but when it's somebody else's property, when it's somebody else's, thing, then it's a lot of pressure, and I want to do the best I can.
Yeah,
so
that one, I'm sorry to interrupt, but also that the history just in Hagar, how long it's been around for, and everything that might even put a little pressure on.
I'm all wonky here.
I know. I've fixed my glasses a couple. I don't know if you noticed.
There we go. That's a little better.
So
I'm still sitting up though.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, to have the history behind Hagar with all that. I mean, it came out. I forget what year it came out, but
73.
73. Yeah, it's been around. It's older than I am. It's one of those beloved strips. And when I broke into the comic industry, the one thing I said is I'll never work for like a big company like Marvel or DC for my fear of being the guy to mess up the characters that I love so well and so many other people love. And I don't know if I would feel the same way with a character like Hagar, in my opinion. I'm not saying you feel this way, but for me, I'd be nervous
I am every week. I'm panicky every week.
Yeah.
I mean, earlier today, I'm working on a set of dailies, and I'm thinking, do I have this? How do I? So I don't even know myself sometimes. It's just, and is this going to be good enough? And so a lot of times, what I'll do is I generally send in the dailies on a Wednesday to them, and Tuesday is just like, and then if I don't feel like I have everything that I'm satisfied with, which is every week, I never feel satisfied with these things. Yeah. But so I get up, I'll set my alarm for 4:00 in the morning. I've even set it for 3 in the morning.
Wow.
And get up super early and get back on it. And you'd be surprised what panic and deadline can do. I'm sure you know. I'm sure you know.
Oh yeah.
And then usually I can round it off and say, okay, I have something that I can feel relatively good about sending in.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I'm just looking something up here. But yeah, no, I believe me, I know that feeling all too well. When I did a strip a couple of years ago. I don't know if you followed it on Instagram. It was just on Instagram and on Facebook. But it was called The Wiz, and it was about a little blue wizard, his Raven, Ajax, and there were some other characters.
Sounds very familiar.
Yeah, you might have seen it. I don't know if you. Yeah. I stopped it back in 2019 because I got sick. I was doing so many things. Ended up in the hospital for like 5 days with pneumonia. Man. Some stuff just had to give. So I said, I'm putting that on hold. And I actually do plan to bring it back. I have about 60, 70 strips that I've written for. So I just got to sit down and start drawing it and to bring it back. But yeah, no, I understand and that one I set up as a test for myself. Can I do something weekly with the schedule I had? Yeah. Can I write? And at first it was, in addition to that, is can I do it all on my iPad? And I was using an app which I thought was great for certain aspects, but to do a full product in, I wasn't happy with. Mm-hmm. So then I started doing it between Photoshop and Clip Studio Paint. I felt more comfortable with the art when I switched over for the drawing ability into those. So, but yeah, it was great. I understand that, like, for the first, I don't know, I have maybe 60, 70 strips up there.
Wow.
There was maybe 3 that I said, hey, I did a good job at. And I went back and reread it about, I don't know, a few months ago. And I'm like, you know what? They all had really good potential. Like, I think we're our own worst enemy. We knock ourselves and say our work just isn't, because to us, we want to get it perfect. We never finish, you know?
I know. I just wanted to let everybody know. I just saw the scroll. I'm just noticing the scroll, and there's an L missing.
Oh my God! I went in and edited it because I had the Y and the L mixed
up. It's supposed to be Slylock Fox.
I do apologize for that.
That's okay.
Let me hide this. Let me do a quick edit.
Oh my God. I should have paid closer attention. I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. I should have had it right. Nope, that didn't do it because I forgot to hit save. So sorry. Give me 1 second.
Just seeing my own image there is scary, you know. So I didn't notice that.
Okay, so where's that L? Why is? Oh, I can't do it. Hold on.
Was it too many characters?
No, I just right before we went on, I got an alert that my keyboard battery is low.
Oh, well,
now it's gone.
Slylockfox.com.
I'll just leave it off. I apologize.
That's okay. That's okay.
I'm like, I thought, and I just put new batteries in like 2 weeks ago. I'm like, how did it die so fast? I just want to say hi to Dion Parsons. It says, Mr. Michael, Mr. Bob, it's nice to see you both. If it's the D Parsons I'm thinking about, he's got a couple of strips. I was trying to look up on Instagram. That's what I was looking up before, but I can't remember his strip name. I would have given it a shout out. It's a really nice, like, fun, wholesome strip. Let me just look it up, see one more time. D Parsons. He's a really, really nice guy. And it's probably not coming up. It's under the strip name. So I'll have to look it up. And Rosebuds. There is.
Oh, yeah. Yes, I know.
Great
yes.
strip.
Nice. Yes.
Yeah, Super D. That's what he goes by. That's what I probably need to look up. Now, Scotty A asks a question. I was going to ask this. He goes, "Are you digital, paper, both? How do you work?"
I still do paper.
Okay.
You know, I have a guy working with me now as an assistant, and when he does his little piece, when he does his stuff, he does it digitally. Although, you know, he sends sketches. I guess he probably does the sketches digitally too. But I just started working with Scott about a year ago. You know, looking for help.
Yeah.
And so he's been helping me a bit, not with the whole strip, but just with part of the strip.
Yeah.
And his name is Scott Underwood, by the way.
Okay, Scott Underwood.
And he's primarily a storyboard artist for film and television. He's worked on some major motion pictures as a storyboard artist, and kind of met him through, I guess through Instagram. We got to be friends.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, "Hey, if you ever need any help with anything, you know, I'd love to work on you." He said, because he was a fan of the strip. He liked the characters. He liked the strip, and so he said, you know, if you need help, give me a call. So I did. I mean, some months went by, some time went by, and you know, I got to a point where I thought, yeah, it would be nice to, you know, at this point have some help. And so I contacted him, and he's been doing some nice things.
That's fantastic.
Yeah,
that's fantastic. Yeah, no, I know most people these days are full digital. I do, you know, I work mostly digital, but I work on paper first. I always just kind of sketch something,
mm-hmm.
and I'll airdrop it over. I'll take a photo and airdrop it to my computer, and then
I'm actually still a dinosaur with the color work as well, because most people now color do all their color either in Photoshop or whatever other Illustrator or whatever else they use. And I still do it the way I did it when I worked at King Features years ago in staff. I make a copy. Now I don't use a Xerox machine. I have my page when it's all finished. It's in digital form. When it's all done, I scan it. It's in digital form. So then I copy it, I scan it, and then I hand color it with color pencils. And the engravers have a color chart that they and that's the way I've been doing it for almost 35 years.
Wow.
Just by hand. I used to use Dr. Martin's dyes, but then my dad, who was coloring after a while, he was coloring his strip because King used to color it for him, but then they stopped that service, so then he colored it. And he said, "Oh, why are you using dyes?" He said, "He says, I used to do that, but it takes so long." And he says, "Why don't you try he says, "It's only a guide. It's not a watercolor. It's not going to hang in a frame." So, he says, "Use colored pencils." So I thought, man, why didn't I think of that? And I started using colored pencils, and I was able to color it I cut like a third off the time. Just because I didn't have to clean the brush and dip and do all that stuff. Just have my pencils there and boom, boom, boom. And so now that's the way I color it. And then I have to, when I'm done coloring, I have to draw a little line to each color and put a little number. And I write it on there.
Yeah, you write the code like Y12 or something. And
it used to be. They used to have like that kind of Y and all that. Now it's just strict just numbers. Okay. And so, and then I scan the color page and send that. I email the color page and the black and white into King Features, and then they take care of it. That's great. But some of my panels can get pretty busy, like in Slylock. Sometimes the Slylock Fox panel is kind of busy. So I've got all these lines. It almost looks like a maze. I mean, it's like going to all these little colors and tiny little, details and everything. And I'm thinking, gosh, I'm glad I'm not the person that has to go in and, fill it, because it's, I just,
that's when we got a comment from Mike Wilkie. Mike Wilkie's also full traditional. He says, what kind of colored pencils do you use?
I just use, sometimes I use probably mostly just cheap Crayola pencils because it doesn't matter. Yeah. What really matters is the number that I put for that color. I do have nice color pencils that I use that I get at the art store, and I don't remember the brand that I last bought, but I buy some nice ones just because I like the feel of them. If I get a cheaper color pencil, I just don't like the way it feels. And I like having something that glides on even though it's just on copy paper. It's still nice to have something that feels good when you're using it. So, but just and I tell you what, I run out of yellow and red and blue, the primaries. I run out of them really fast. So I'm always going, and when I go to the store, I have to buy a whole pack just to get a yellow. I could order it online, but it's easier just when I'm at the grocery store to go into the stationery department and grab a pack. So I've got like a million browns that I'll never use, and greens and purples and but it's the yellow that goes fast and the red and the blue. It's Slylock and Max Mouse. I'm sorry, like I said, I was colorblind. Is Slylock red? Yeah, he's like scarlet color. 009. Okay, I'm looking at the photo right now of him. But I can see it in this. Sometimes I don't see him as red. So it's red, and then his suit is blue. Yeah. And did I say 009? It's not 009. 009 is I believe the blue. I have to go get my chart. Yeah. I always use it. I have my chart. I have a chart on my screen when I'm doing it. But anyway, and then Max is yellow, and then he's got like magenta hat and pants. Okay. Now
D asks, do you have alternate recommendations? Would love to know your thoughts. And I don't, I don't know if you understand the question. I'm like, what do you, oh, hold on. I missed a thing. What advice would you give a current and future cartoonists who want to get into the comic business? Would you encourage, dissuade them from getting into newsprint? And then, okay, the second part is, do you have alternate recommendations? Would love to know your thoughts.
Well, you know, the print business in general is tough. I know a lot of cartoonists that just don't even, it's not even on their radar to try to do a syndicated strip anymore. And fortunately there are other ways to go. I mean, digital is for some people it's been, you know, a great way to go. You know, I know over the years ago, not so much now, but I got to know a little Scott Kurtz, who just was one of the pioneers in doing a strip online, and he's a very nice man. I met him at the San Diego Comic-Con in 1970s. No, 2007. 2007, I met him, and but anyway, other people too are doing pretty well with you know, websites, doing you know, online comics.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
So that's one way to go.
Yeah,
that's one way to go. And of course, a lot of artists have gone into doing you know, gaming illustration and animation.
Mm-hmm.
So, but you know, newsprint, it's tough. It's tough.
Yeah, that is the hard. I mean, I think a lot of people in my age group, at least, who work in comics or have always wanted to work in comics, had that syndication dream.
Mm-hmm.
I know I did. I think today also people can learn to self-syndicate, especially through the web.
Yeah.
And find ways to make money. A friend of the show, Tim Jones, who does the Sour Grape comic strip, he's a self-syndicated artist.
I see his work on Instagram.
Yeah, and he's in, I think only, I don't know, I don't want to say a number like the wrong number, but I think it's like 6 or 7 papers, and he approached them himself. So, and he just got a new paper. I think he posted like a month or so ago.
That's great.
You know, it's also, how do you do it? His comes out weekly, so he hits weekly newspapers.
Right.
You know, if you want to do a daily, that I think will be harder.
I'm still losing it here. I don't know what's happening.
That's not bad.
How's that? Okay.
It works for me. As long as you can see, that's the important thing.
I can see. Just. So no, I think you know, weekly newspapers they're suffering too. A lot of the weekly, especially the alternative cartoonists that were doing weekly strips, took big hits. And it's just really tough.
Yeah. But I mean, it's one of those things. I think today, like you said, gaming, animation, with sites like YouTube, you want to be an animator, just start posting on YouTube. You want to do comics. There's webtoons. I mean, it depends on the format. If you're looking for like daily style syndicated strips, that's the hard one to get. But if you
I think there are even some people I see that you know, are monetizing their cartoons through Instagram. I mean, some of them have like many thousands of followers, and then they were able to you know, sell books or merchandise or do commissions, and you know, make some money that way as well.
No, it's so many great opportunities now in this world because of the internet. So, and social media. Let's see, I'm just looking at the time. I was wondering before, because I might wrap up in a few, but because I'm having a lot of fun, I'm going to tell you this right now. I'm having tons of fun, and I'm dying to hear like more stories. But at some point, we're on different coasts,
Yeah.
And at some point, I do need to head to bed.
Oh, I know. I understand.
It's
I'm going to be getting up at 4 a.m. tomorrow, so I'll be going soon myself.
I wake up between 5 and 6 every morning.
Yeah.
I don't need an alarm clock. Usually 5:30 hits and I'm awake, and that's just like my natural time to wake up.
Yeah.
And if I'll try to go back to sleep. Like today, I woke up, I wasn't feeling too well. I slept until 7, but that was
that's late.
Yeah, that was late for me.
Yeah.
But before we go, is there anything you wanted to talk about that we didn't get a chance to?
Well, you mentioned digital, so I should mention. I would like to mention King Features Syndicate has a web presence. It's called Comics Kingdom.
Yep.
And all of their comic features are there, including Slylock Fox and Comics for Kids. And so you can go there and read all your favorite strips from King, just like Go Comics has they have Universal Press has their features online. Yeah. So that's a good place to read comics, and hopefully besides having it as a website, a standalone site, King Features also has Comics Kingdom appear on many newspaper websites. I know, just locally, my local newspaper, besides having a Sunday comics section and daily comics, they also have their website. Besides their print paper, they have their website, and they use Comics Kingdom. It's on their website, and so that's another way that we're getting comics out. I mean, it hasn't reached, like, for me, it hasn't reached, like, as far as money goes, it still is. It doesn't pay as much as print. But that may change. That dynamic could change, as it moves along. But it's a revenue stream, and it's a way of getting the comic out to somebody who maybe they don't get the paper delivered, or they don't buy the newspaper. They just get all their information online, and they can still see their favorite comics.
Yeah, no, that is great. I actually use the app quite often.
Oh, good.
So I have that. I go on Go Comics. I've always, even though I love comic books, I've always been more of a strip guy than a book guy. And growing up, to me, and that, because that's how I learned to read and draw, and it was the newspaper.
Me too. I used to collect. I don't know if you did, but when I was young, Fawcett was a big publishing house for reprint of syndicated comics. So I had a lot of their books, and then later Tempo came in, and they I think Hegel the Horrible was in Tempo books a lot. But I had early Dennis the Menace that I Ketchum work that was just wonderful, and then early stuff like BC and Wizard of Id. Those were those little paperbacks. I just love them.
I got a bunch of the Heathcliff ones here.
And Heathcliff too.
Yeah,
I got to meet George Gigley. He was a lot of fun to be around.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I used to buy my collections when we'd have the school book fairs, like those book fairs.
Yeah.
And my parents give me a certain amount of money, and I remember coming home with like Mad Magazine collections and Heathcliff and Charlie, and Peanuts and stuff. And I'm like, that's how I got a lot of those. Like every year was. I still
have a lot of those. I still have the Sergio Aragone's books. I loved his stuff.
Oh, Sergio's my all-time, I think, favorite artist. I don't know.
Yeah.
Not to knock any artist out there, but I don't know how you top like Sergio.
I know.
it's just one of those.
And he's so prolific and fast too.
Yeah, exactly.
He does a thing. I guess this year, I don't know if they're going to have. If it's going to. I think the Comic-Con is going to be back to having, like last year it was just online.
It was the virtual, yeah.
But Sergio, along with another cartoonist, Scott Shaw.
Yeah, I know.
Another terrific cartoonist. and then maybe other people would come in, but they would have the quick thing. They had quick draw. Mark Evanier, I think Mark Evanier would host it. He, do the panel, and then Sergio and the other guys, Scott and whoever else was joining them, would give him a subject. I think somebody in the audience would say something, and then they would quick. And he was just so not just fast drawing, but his mind, his ideas. Yeah, amazing.
And I've watched a few of those on YouTube. I'll look up Sergio Aragone's drawing, and they'll show the quick draws that somebody recorded, like on their phone, and they're just it's.
I never when I used to go to the Comic-Con, I would never miss those panels. I love them.
Yeah, it's. Oh, I don't know. Just I'm looking right now. I have an original group piece hanging above me here. It's
it's it's funny. I'm getting off here again, but when I go to Comic-Con, I look at the schedule and the program and see what I wanted to and I say, oh my God, I can't believe this person's here. This person's here, and everybody was like standing in line for 6 hours to go into some big auditorium to see some, celebrity actor for a movie or whatever. And over here was, somebody that was such a, like a pioneer in comics, or somebody who was just so good. And you walk, and you could just walk right in. And there was no line. And it's like, you don't know what you're missing. I mean, this is history. This is great.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Wow. I think that's a good note to end on. I'm going to drop you backstage. You mind hanging out for a minute?
No, I don't mind.
All right. I want to thank you again for coming on. I really did have a lot of fun. I'd love to bring you on again in the future and talk more about, anything comic related.
Yeah. Anytime. I could talk. Believe me, I could talk all night about comics.
Yeah, same here. And maybe I'll have you on with our mutual friend John Wilcox.
Oh, John,
John's going to be doing a separate show with us, maybe in August. August, September time. We gotta talk, and because I'm trying to set it up as a live from his house.
Oh,
because he's got an amazing collection.
Yeah,
that just. I think I need to be in person to.
He's a very interesting guy, and he has a lot of great stories.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I've had him on before. I love hanging out with John. Some of my favorite phone calls are when John calls me. And
I knew John, and I knew him, fairly well, but I was out of the area. I moved out of Connecticut in 2004, so I was out of that geographically. I was not around a lot of those artists, but John was very close, a very close friend of my dad, and and my dad really liked him, and they were good friends, and John, when my dad got older and I wasn't in town, John was there for him for a lot of things, and he's just a really sweet person.
Oh, he's the greatest.
Yeah.
And I remember him telling me stories about how your dad would throw him in comics, whether it was just his name or
he did that from time. Another guy that lived in the area that would show up in the comic a lot was Ron Gular. Ron was he wrote like hundreds of books over his career. But he was also a comics historian, and he wrote books on comics, and he would always be at lunches. Same thing.
Yeah. Wow. That's great.
All right. Well, you better go.
I'm gonna let you go. I'll drop you backstage. Let me just do my sign off. Thanks again for coming on. I really did have a blast.
Thank you, Michael, so much.
Yeah.
This is really this is my first live visual podcast.
Wow.
I did a podcast when Oh Brother came out, but it was just on the phone.
On the phone, yeah.
So I was a little nervous. I have to give props to my son Jeff. Set me up with this because this was a lot easier than tidying up my studio. You don't want to see that.
I know the feeling.
He's a photographer, and so he set me up with the blue screen behind his backdrop, and I also wanted one last thing. He built my website, and he did a beautiful job on it. I'm really happy with it, and we're going to be doing more with it. But he did it, and he did a really nice job. So I want to say thank you, Jeff.
Thank you. It looks good. It looks great. I've been on your website too. So, so thanks again. Just hang out backstage for a minute.
Okay.
And I will. I'll do my sign off. All right.
Okay.
Thanks again.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, guys. So that was a really fun show. I mean it. I totally had a blast tonight. Listening to Bob's stories and just hearing about comics. You guys know me. I love talking comics. Next week, we're going to have another guy we can talk comics with, but we can also talk Comic Cons, because next week is Terrificon, and I'm going to have the show owner, promoter, whatever you want to call him, Mitch Halcrock, come on, and we're going to talk all about Terrificon, the artists that are going to be there, the guests that are going to be there, media guests and stuff. So, yeah, let's tune in next week, 8:30 on Tuesday. You'll start seeing the ads come up real soon. Thanks again to Bob Weber Jr. for coming on. And don't forget to go to his website, slylockfox.com. Bye, guys.